Hello, my dear children. We warmly welcome you to this Guru Gedara learning program. Today we are going to learn about photosynthesis and transportation. This is the first lesson in your syllabus for the third term. By now, you already know about the lessons that you have to learn for your third term syllabus. In that, the first lesson is main biological processes taking place in plants. Under that, today we are going to learn the first part of the lesson, main biological processes. The first part is photosynthesis and transportation. Let me explain the learning outcomes of this lesson, children. This is what we expect at the end of learning this lesson. This is what we expect that you should achieve. First, at the end of this lesson, students will be able to define the term photosynthesis, to identify the factors affecting photosynthesis, to write the word equation for photosynthesis, to name main product and the byproduct of photosynthesis, to explain the steps of the starch test for a leaf, to write global importance of photosynthesis, to identify methods of transportation in plants, to define the terms diffusion and osmosis and name instances where diffusion and osmosis take place in plants. Okay. Now, we are moving to the first part of the lesson, photosynthesis. I know, children, this is not a new term for you. You have learned this term photosynthesis in grade 6. Can you remember? Just try to remind the things you learn about photosynthesis in grade 6. How did you learn there? At that time, you were small children. Now you are in grade 8. You are now too big. At that time, you learn photosynthesis is the main process of producing food for the whole biosphere. Today, we are going to learn some more facts about this technical term photosynthesis. If I explain this particular main term photosynthesis, children, photosynthesis can be explained as the process of producing food in green plants by utilizing sunlight energy and by taking carbon dioxide and water as raw materials. By looking at this definition, looking at this explanation, you can understand, children, this process needs sunlight energy, right? So, the main source that provides energy for this process is sunlight, right? And also, there are some more other factors needed for this process. Here it says by utilizing sunlight energy and by taking carbon dioxide and water as raw materials. Now, I will explain you the place where this photosynthesis takes place in a plant. Mainly, photosynthesis is taking place in green parts of a plant. What are green parts of a plant, children? Mainly green leaves, right? Let me explain what happens in green leaves during this process. Here this is a green leaf, you can see, and if a very small tiny part of this green leaf is tested by a microscope, you can see cells of green leaves like this. And if these cells are more magnified and observed, you will be able to see some green color spots like that. See, you can see green color dots like things. These green color parts are called chloroplast. They are tiny structures, tiny microscopic structures in cells. Actually, this process, photosynthesis, takes place inside these tiny structures, chloroplast. Why they are seen in green, children? Because there is a pigment, color pigment called chlorophyll contained in these pigments, these cells. Right. Then see, this is the summary of the whole process, photosynthesis. Now you can see sunlight enters green leaves and carbon dioxide gas is taken from the atmosphere. Then water for this process is absorbed by plant roots. By all contributing all these factors, food is produced in the leaf. During the process, gas oxygen is released to the atmosphere. It is indicated by this green arrow, the way that oxygen gas is released. Okay. Here, this leaf shows you the way that cells of the green plant leaves are positioned. See, normally when a green leaf is just touch and observe, children, you can see it is a very thin leaf, very thin, thickness is very low. But actually when it is observed by a microscope, you can observe many layers inside. See, this is the topmost layer of the leaf and this is the bottommost layer of the leaf, and inside these two layers, these cells of the green leaf are positioned. Here you can see they are seen in green because of the chlorophyll pigment in it. Okay? And the way that sunlight penetrates the leaf cells, here it is indicated. And what is indicated by this light blue arrow? This is how water enters the leaf for this process. Normally water is absorbed by roots and this water is carried towards the upper part by the xylem tissue. You have learned about xylem and phloem tissues in grade 7. So, you know that the main task of the xylem tissue is transportation of water and minerals. So, by the xylem tissue, water is taken up and finally, this is how the way that this water comes through the vein of the leaf and finally enter in the plant cells. Okay. Then actually this gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen related to this process are exchanged through tiny structures called stomata. These are microscopic structures, children. If a thin peel of a plant leaf is tested and observed by a microscope, you can observe ice-like structures like this. These ice-like structures are called stomata. When these stomata are observed more deep by an electron microscope, that stomata is seen like this. Here you will be able to see a smoke-like thing is going out from stomata. This smoke-like thing indicates the exchange of gases. So, carbon dioxide needed for this process is taken into the cells of plant leaves by these stomata, and oxygen produced by this process also taken out and released out by the leaf also by the structures stomata. Okay, right. Now, I am going to show you how this process photosynthesis can be summarized by an equation. This is called word equation of photosynthesis, right? This is how it is written, children. This is how it is written. Look at here. Carbon dioxide plus water, an arrow, then glucose plus oxygen, right? So, sunlight and chlorophyll are written above the arrow and below the arrow. Because there are some reasons for writing this equation like this. What are the reasons? Let me explain the reasons for writing the equation like this. Here, these two, carbon dioxide and water, are considered as raw materials for this process. Raw materials. Right? And sunlight is not a raw material. Because of that, it is written just on the arrow. This is the source of energy. Energy source. Chlorophyll is considered as the internal factor because it is available in the leaf itself. It is not taken from outside. So, it is considered as the internal factor. Internal factor. So, by looking at this equation, children, you can identify that there are 4 factors needed for this process photosynthesis. What are the 4 factors? Carbon dioxide, water, sunlight and chlorophyll are the 4 factors needed for this process. Then, what are these glucose and oxygen? Glucose is the food, actual food produced by this process is glucose. Now you can understand in grade 6 you will learn like food is produced by photosynthesis. Now you know what is this actual food produced by this process. It is considered as the main product of this process. This oxygen releases during the main production. So, oxygen is considered as the byproduct of the process. Right. Okay, children. Let me then show you the total process and the factors affecting the process. Here you can see factors affecting the process as I explained you in the previous part. What are the factors? Carbon dioxide, water. These two are considered as raw materials. Then sunlight is also a factor. It is the source of energy. And chlorophyll is also another essential factor which is considered as the internal factor. So, if a question asks you like this, name 2 external factors needed for photosynthesis, then what do you write, children? You can write any 3 of the factors given here. What are the factors? All carbon dioxide, water and sunlight, all three are external factors because they are taken externally. So, you can write any two from these three. Okay. Right, let us move to the next part. These are the main product and the byproduct of photosynthesis process. Main product is glucose and the byproduct is oxygen. Okay children, now let me explain what happens for the glucose produced in leaves by this process. Right. Glucose, you know, glucose is the main product of this process. Just after producing this glucose in leaf cells, it is converted to another compound called starch. Why? Because glucose is soluble in water. So, once it is stored, once it is produced in the leaf cell, this glucose can dissolve with water and move here and there and can go to any place. But when it is converted to starch, as starch is insoluble in water, starch cannot move. So, just after producing glucose by this process, it is converted to starch and stored in the leaf temporarily. Okay? Right. Then, if a person needs to check a leaf, whether this leaf has undergone photosynthesis, whether this leaf has carried out photosynthesis, and if he is testing the leaf for the presence of glucose, can he find glucose in the leaf, children? No, because it is already converted to starch. So, that person must need to check the leaf for the presence of starch in it. If starch is present, if it is scientifically proved that starch is present in the leaf, then we can conclude that this particular leaf has carried out photosynthesis. Right, this is the experiment that we do to test a leaf for starch. Okay, right. Now, see this activity, children. This is an activity that can be conducted in your school lab with your teacher, right? When you do this lesson in your school, you will be able to do this lesson, do this activity really with your teacher. But now, you can understand. Let me explain what happens here, how to do the starch test. Okay? First, we have to pluck a leaf from an outside plant. Why we pluck the leaf from an outside plant, children? Because photosynthesis is taking place by utilizing sunlight energy. So, there should be sunlight to for this process to carry out photosynthesis. So, we must pluck a leaf from an outside plant and then boil in water like this. Right. Here, a beaker with water is kept on a tripod stand, and using the Bunsen burner, this leaf must be boiled for few minutes. Few minutes means it is about 5 to 10 minutes. After boiling the leaf in this water 5 to 10 minutes, the leaf is taken out and put in a boiling tube containing ethyl alcohol. Ethyl alcohol is a colorless liquid available in the lab, children. We have to take some ethyl alcohol into a boiling tube, and then that leaf which is boiled in water must be inserted into the boiling tube, and then it should be placed inside the water bath and heated. Okay. Why can't we boil this ethyl alcohol directly using the flame? Why do we keep it inside a water bath like this and heat? There is a reason for that. Because this ethyl alcohol is highly flammable. It can catch fire easily. So, it is not allowed to heat ethyl alcohol directly on a flame. So, as a precautionary method, we heat ethyl alcohol by placing it in a water bath. Right. While heating this leaf in ethyl alcohol, you can observe a thing. What happens? This colorless ethyl alcohol turns green color gradually. Why? Because chlorophyll pigment in leaves are dissolving in ethyl alcohol and the chlorophyll pigment is removing from the leaf. While chlorophyll is removing from the leaf turns colorless. The green color of the leaf gradually decreases. When the green color is removed, then the leaf is taken out and must wash with clean water and place it on a white dish and add few drops of iodine onto that. Children, this iodine is a brown color liquid available in the lab. Here you can see the steps of starch test that we learned before. What are the steps? Heat the leaves in boiling water, then put it in an alcohol container and heat, and then take it out and wash and keep it on a white dish, and finally add few drops of iodine. Here, as I told you, this iodine is a brown color liquid like this. It is a brown color solution. You can take few drops of that solution and add to this leaf, which is first initially boiled in water and then boiled, heated in alcohol, and now we are adding few drops of iodine onto that. Then what can you observe at the end? When you add few drops of iodine, you will observe that the leaves turn dark blue color. If the leaf turns dark blue color, that indicates there's starch present in the leaf. Thereby we can conclude that this plant leaf has carried out photosynthesis and it contains starch. So, the plant that this leaf is taken is conducting is carried out photosynthesis. It is the conclusion of this activity. Okay, children, this is the activity that can be done in the lab to show that oxygen gas is released during photosynthesis. Right, children, this is how this simple setup is arranged. You can see here the way that the setup is arranged. First, you have to take a trough of water. You know the trough. Have you seen the trough in your lab, children? It is a glass container which is bigger than a large beaker in the lab. You must take some water to the trough and then you have to find an aquatic plant like hydrilla. It is easy to use hydrilla here, children, because it is a floating aquatic plant. So, take some pieces of hydrilla like this and keep it, trap this hydrilla plant using a funnel here like this, and then close this funnel by a test tube containing water. After arranging all, the setup must be carefully taken to a place where there are bright sunlight, and keep the setup in an outside place that bright sunlight is taken. Okay? And observe. When you observe few minutes, you can see air bubbles. Air bubbles are releasing from this aquatic plant, hydrilla, and these air bubbles rise up through the test tube and this gas is collected at the top. What is this gas? We know that the gas oxygen is released during this process. So, this gas should be oxygen. Why I call this gas should be oxygen? Because we don't know, we haven't experimentally proved that this gas is oxygen. But theoretically we know that oxygen is released. But there should be a way to prove this gas released here is oxygen. For that, we have another activity, children. This is the activity we can do to confirm that collected gas is oxygen. What we have to do? You must take a splinter. Normally in our school lab, when we are conducting this activity, we take a piece of eagle or a piece of joystick. You know joystick? Piece of eagle or a joystick. Just burn the eagle first and off it. Flame must be off. Once the flame of the joystick is off, what do you see, children? You can see a spark, glowing spark in it. So, then you must insert that splinter with the spark to this test tube containing oxygen. Then what will happen? If you insert this splinter with a tiny spark like this, you can observe this reignites, reburns with a brighter flame. If it reburns with a brighter flame, we can confirm that this gas here is oxygen. Thereby we can confirm that oxygen gas is released during photosynthesis. Understood, children? We know that we have learned that oxygen gas is the supporter for combustion. Because it supports combustion, it reignites, reburns with a brighter flame here. Okay. Then, this is the complete process about photosynthesis, children. Now, we are going to learn what are the global importance of the process photosynthesis. As I told you at the start of the lesson, this is a vital process. This is an essential process because of these reasons. First, it releases oxygen for the whole organisms. It is the gas essential for breathing. It is the gas essential for respiration. So, this is the only process that releases oxygen for us to breathe. And the second thing, it produces food for everyone, for all plants and animals, all organisms. So, the second reason for the global importance of photosynthesis is this. And third, as it absorbs gas carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it helps to minimize the problem global warming. You know, children, it is the ongoing, most recently suffering problem nowadays. global warming. Because of that, we feel so hot. When you go out in the daytime, it is very difficult to bear up this hotness. The reason for this is increase of carbon dioxide gas in the atmosphere. This can be minimized to a certain extent by this process, because photosynthesis process needs carbon dioxide and green plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Okay. Finally, this process purify our air because it absorbs carbon dioxide and it releases oxygen. So, this process helps to keep our air clean. So, these are the global importance of photosynthesis process. Okay children, let's move to the next part of the lesson today. The next part of the lesson today is methods of transportation in plants. Like our human body, children, in our body also there are so many things to transport from one place to another. Like the food we eat is absorbed inside our digestive system and the nutrients must be transported to the required places. And we inhale oxygen from our lungs and that oxygen also must be transported to the other parts of the body. So, there are mechanisms in our body to transport substances. Like that, in a plant also, there are methods to transport substances. Actually, transportation is what? Transportation is transferring substances from one place to another. What are the substances that must be transported in a plant, children? Water and minerals absorbed by roots must be transported to the upper part of the plant, and food produced in leaves by the process photosynthesis must be transported to the other parts of the plant. Likewise, gases too must be transported to the required places in a plant. So, there are different methods used by a plant to transport these substances. What are the methods? There are three main methods: diffusion, osmosis and mass flow. Now, I am going to explain you each terms: diffusion, osmosis and mass flow. First, we will see what is diffusion is. Before explaining the term, before learning the definition of this term, just look at this diagram, children. Now, you may have experienced what happens when you put 1 or 2 drops of ink to water, right? Here this diagram shows what happens when a crystal of condensate is put into a water beaker. See, after few seconds you can observe purple color spreads throughout the beaker. This happens because of the process diffusion. Actually, what happens here? Condensate particles, here when you put the condensate crystal into the bottom of this water beaker, children, condensate particles are more concentrated in that place and no condensate particles in the outer place of this water, here in the outer place. Because of high concentration of condensate particles here, these condensate particles spread throughout water particles. This method of moving particles is called diffusion. This happens not only in liquid medium, this happens in the gas medium too, children. Now, just look at this here. When the piece of condensed is added to the beaker of water, children, see red color dots represents condensed particle. Suppose blue color dots represents water particles. As more condensed particles are concentrated here, these condensed particles travel through the water particles. Then after traveling, here you can see how the condensed particles are positioned. They are spread, they have already spread throughout the container. So, this is what happens in the condensed experiment. See, initially when the condensed piece is added, initially it is seen like this. Then after diffusion of condensed particles throughout the solution, then finally you can see the color of the water glass completely it has turned to purple color. Understood? Right. Let me explain how gas particles are diffused. See, you may have experienced this, children. When a perfume bottle is opened in a room, what will happen? So, if the perfume bottle is open far away from you, still after few seconds you will get the fragrance or the smell of the perfume. It happens because of this. See, children, this is what happens. Perfume particles are evaporated from the bottle, and as there's more perfume particle concentration in the bottle, these perfume particles move, spread through air particles like this. This is what diffusion is. Then we can write the definition of the process diffusion. Right. This is how the process diffusion is defined. How? It is a physical process where molecules of a material move from a place of high concentration to a place of less concentration. Then we will see what are the instances in a plant where diffusion takes place, children. Right. See, these are the instances in a plant where diffusion takes place. First, diffusion of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to the leaf. Can you remember when we were learning photosynthesis, I explained you the way that carbon dioxide enters the leaf. The process is diffusion. And again, diffusion of oxygen. Now we know by this photosynthesis process oxygen is produced. So this oxygen is released out from the leaf by this process diffusion. And again, then during respiration also gases are exchanged. We take oxygen in, plants take oxygen in and release carbon dioxide. Here also the method of movement of gases takes place by the process diffusion. Okay, children, that's all about diffusion. Now we are moving to the next method of transportation, osmosis. Right. Let me explain what osmosis is. Osmosis is movement of water particles from a place of high water concentration to a place of less water concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Right? Actually, by this process, only water is moved. Let me explain how water particles move through a semi-permeable membrane. Right. Now, look at this diagram, children. Here the membrane given here by these dotted lines is a semi-permeable membrane. I will explain what a semi-permeable membrane later, right? Just look at here. This is a membrane which allows only water particles to go through it, no any other particles, right? Now, in this side, children, you can see these red dots represent sugar molecules, sugar particles. There are more sugar particles here, very less amount of water particles. Here in this side, there are more water particles and less amount of sugar particles. Then what happens here? As there is high concentration of water in this side, water molecules move through this semi-permeable membrane towards the other side. After moving water molecules to the other side, water level in this side decreases. Here, this is what happened after moving water molecules to the other side. This process is called osmosis. Did you understand, children? According to the particles movement through a membrane, children, there are three types of membranes: permeable membranes, impermeable membranes and semi-permeable membranes. Permeable membranes allow any particle to go through that. Impermeable membranes do not allow anything to go through them. But semi-permeable membranes allow only selected particles to go through them. Therefore, here through this semi-permeable membrane, only water particles can go through, not sugar or salt particles. There are some examples for semi-permeable membranes, children. There are artificial membranes and natural semi-permeable membranes too. What are natural semi-permeable membrane? Egg membrane and the cell membrane are the examples, best examples for natural semi-permeable membrane. You may have seen the egg membrane, children. Have you ever experienced by removing a shell, egg shell by a boiled egg, children? When you try to remove the shell of an boiled egg, you have experienced that you can find a thin membrane, very flexible thin membrane. That is called egg membrane and it is a natural semi-permeable membrane. And as an artificial semi-permeable membrane, we can take cellophane papers. Cellophane papers can be used as an artificial semi-permeable membrane. Okay, children, then we will see what are the instances where osmosis takes place in a plant. Especially when water is absorbed by plant roots, water is taken to the plant's root xylem by the process osmosis. And also when water is transported, moved inside the plants from a cell to another cell, also osmosis takes place and the process is osmosis. Right, that's all about the process osmosis. Now we are moving to the next method of transportation, mass flow. Mass flow is this, children. Mass flow occurs due to a pressure gradient in a certain place. You know, children, when water flows, it always flows from a high pressure to less pressure, right? From an area of high pressure to an area of less pressure. Likewise, here also in the plant, there are some instances where materials move due to a pressure gradient. This method is called mass flow. Actually, once water and minerals are absorbed by the root xylem, those things are transported to the upper part by the process mass flow. And also, children, the food produced in leaves, I told you during the lesson photosynthesis that food is converted to starch and stored. But after few minutes, that starch again converts into a compound called sucrose, and as a solution of sucrose, that food is transported to the other parts of the plant. It is done by the phloem tissue. So, food transportation and the water transportation in the xylem tissue takes place by this method, mass flow. Here you can see this is the xylem vessel, the way that water and minerals are transported, carried towards the upper part of the plant. This is the phloem tissue. This shows the way that food is carried towards the other parts after producing in leaves. Okay children, with that we have come to the end of the lesson today. Today we learn about photosynthesis and the methods of transportation in plants. So, let me summarize what we have learned today. For when we are summarizing, then you should be able to answer my questions. Now, check whether you can answer these questions, children. Right. This is a paragraph that you need to fill in the blanks in it. Just read it, children. Right. Photosynthesis is the process of producing what? Producing food in green plants. Let me write answers here. Food in green plants. The source of energy for this process is the sun. I know that you all know the answer for these questions. Raw materials for the process are, what are raw materials, children? Can you remember? Water and carbon dioxide. Right. Chlorophyll is the internal factor. Internal factor. Then blank is the main product. What is the main product of this process? Glucose. And which is the byproduct of the process? Oxygen. Okay. Children, let me explain, let me show you the next exercise. Can you say whether these statements are right or wrong? See, chlorophyll can trap sunlight energy. Is it correct? Yes, it is correct. Glucose is converted into starch in leaves. Correct. Oxygen is the main product released by photosynthesis. Wrong. Iodine is dark blue color. Is it correct, children? No, wrong. It is brown color. Gas exchange during photosynthesis is taking place by diffusion. Yes, it is correct. Diffusion is the main way of absorbing water by plant roots. No, that is wrong. Diffusion is not the process, it is osmosis. Mass flow occurs according to a pressure gradient. Yes, correct. Okay, now see some more questions. Right. Check whether you can answer these questions, children. Which is the chemical in the lab used to identify starch in the leaf, and what is the color of this chemical? The chemical is iodine, color is brown color. Next, what is the color change that can be observed at the end if starch is available in the leaf? Dark blue color. What can be concluded by this activity? Photosynthesis has taken place in the plant. Right to global importance of photosynthesis. It produces food for the whole biosphere and it releases oxygen for the respiration of organisms. Okay, children, there are some more questions to evaluate whether you have learned this lesson properly. See, it can be observed that air bubbles release from aquatic plants in a fish tank during the daytime. Which is this gas released? It is oxygen. If you want to collect a sample of this gas, how do you arrange a setup? Now, you must draw the setup with the trough of water and the funnel and the plant and the test tube inverted upside down. Can you remember? Don't forget to draw water and the plant in the setup. Explain a way that you confirm this gas is oxygen. Then this is how you must write your answer. When a splinter with a spark is introduced into this gas container, if it reignites with a brighter flame, the gas is oxygen. Right. Then next question. Name 3 main methods of transportation in plants: diffusion, osmosis and mass flow. By which method the gas carbon dioxide is entered plant cells for photosynthesis? Diffusion. Explain the term osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of water particles from a place of high water concentration to a place of less water concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Finally, give one instance where osmosis takes place in a plant. When absorbing water by plant roots into the plant. Okay, children, with that we have come to the end of the lesson today. With this we are going to conclude the lesson, and I hope that you all enjoyed the lesson very well, and see you again with another lesson. Goodbye, children.